My husband swore he'd take care of our finances so I could focus on recovery. A year later, I found secret loans, overdue taxes, and $80,000 in credit card debt, all in my name. This morning, he asked if I'd co-sign for a second mortgage. I never thought I'd be one of those wives who didn't know what was going on in her own household. But here I am, 35, sick to my stomach, sitting in my car outside a Starbucks because I can't walk back into that house right now. For context, I had major surgery last year, scary, invasive, months of recovery. My husband insisted I focus on healing. He'd handle everything else. Bills, insurance, mortgage, taxes. I didn't argue. I was too tired to fight. He said he had it under control. I should have known. It started with little things. A missed bill here, a weird call from a bank there. I asked, he had answers. Clerical error. Auto pay mistake. They fixed it. I believed him. Because I wanted to. Because the alternative, that he was lying, felt too heavy while I was learning to walk again. But last week I got a letter. Not addressed to him. To me. From a collections agency. It was about a credit card I never opened. I went digging, and what I found were $80,000 in debt. And 90% of it is in my name. I used to be one of those people who found comfort in control. I wasn't some uptight spreadsheet robot, but I had systems. A digital calendar, monthly budget sheets, savings plans. I liked knowing where things were when bills were due, how much was left on the mortgage. It wasn't about being obsessive. It was about safety. Predictability. Especially after growing up in a family where we sometimes had to boil water on the stove because the gas got cut off again. So when I say I never saw this coming, I mean I trained my entire adult life to prevent exactly this kind of disaster. But I wasn't prepared for being sick, or for being betrayed in the exact moment I couldn't protect myself. It started with fatigue, the kind that lingers even after sleep. Then came stomach cramps, a missed period, another, then pain, weight loss, tests, blood work, referrals, more waiting, and finally a diagnosis I still can't say without my voice catching: advanced endometriosis with complications. I needed a total hysterectomy, not partial, full, plus major abdominal reconstruction. The kind of surgery that guts you, physically, emotionally, financially. I remember the night before the procedure. I was curled up on the couch in an old hoodie, trying not to cry, while my husband, Jeff, kept trying to reassure me. He rubbed my shoulders, kissed my forehead, promised me, "I've got you. You just focus on healing, okay? Let me take care of everything else." I nodded, too drained to argue. That phrase, "I'll handle everything," it sounded like love. For a while, it even looked like love. He brought me home from the hospital, propped me up with pillows, gave me pain meds on schedule. He even helped me to the bathroom those first few days when I could barely stand. I remember thinking, wow, maybe this is the part where we become stronger. But slowly, things began to blur. I'd ask, "Did you pay the internet bill?" He'd smile and say, "Of course." Then it would cut out for 2 days. Provider issue, he'd shrug. I'd notice unopened envelopes stacked in a drawer. Ads, he said. All junk. My credit card got declined at CVS, the emergency one I barely touched. Weird glitch, he insisted. Probably fraud. I'll call them. I didn't press. Because at first, I truly believed him. But also because I didn't have the energy to dig deeper. Post-op pain is no joke. I was doped up on muscle relaxants and opioids, struggling to sit up straight without crying. The thought of sorting through bills and online accounts made me nauseous. And he kept insisting, "Don't stress, babe. I've got it." So I let him. But even after I started to recover, something felt off. He got jumpy when I was on the shared laptop. Closed browser tabs too quickly. He stopped leaving his phone unattended. And money, God, it was always tight. Groceries turned into frozen pizza 3 nights a week. He canceled our streaming subscriptions to save. One day, I found him yelling at a customer service rep because they wouldn't reverse a charge. That rep turned out to be from a credit card company I didn't even know we had. I asked him straight up, "Is everything okay financially?" He gave me that practiced, wounded look. "You don't trust me?" So I dropped it. Again. The guilt was a fog I couldn't shake. I was the one who got sick. I wasn't earning for months. I hadn't touched our accounts. In my head, I told myself, of course things are strained. We've been through a lot. He's doing his best. Then came the envelope. No return address. Just my full name, typed in all caps. Inside, a collections notice. $6,742. A credit card balance I didn't recognize. Opened in my name. Our address. Months past due. My first thought wasn't even anger. It was panic. Identity theft? I showed it to Jeff. His reaction was immediate and telling. First, denial. That's not real. Must be a scam. Then, I was going to tell you. Then, I needed it at the time. It was for emergencies. Just temporary. I asked, calmly, how many accounts? He stared at the floor. Just one. Jeff, I said again. How many? Silence. So I opened my laptop, pulled up my credit report. I hadn't checked in over a year. Post-surgery, it just slipped through the cracks. And there they were. 9 credit cards. All in my name. All opened within the last 12 months. Most maxed out. 1 in collections. 2 with pending legal notices. Another flagged for suspicious activity. Total balance? $80,000. I scrolled, numb. Page after page of transactions I didn't recognize. Amazon purchases. Crypto investments. A failed eBay store setup. Flights. Equipment for a podcast that never launched. 1 card was maxed on poker websites and sports betting. I looked at him. He couldn't meet my eyes. I was going to fix it, he mumbled. Once I got ahead. Once the investments paid off. You did this, I said, my voice hollow, while I was in bed recovering from surgery. You were too fragile to worry about it, he snapped back. I didn't want to stress you out. You should be thanking me. That was the moment I realized he didn't just lie. He used my silence. He counted on it. He knew I'd be too weak, too tired, too drugged to notice. And instead of stepping up, instead of protecting me, he saw it as an opening. That night, I didn't cry. I couldn't. I walked into the guest room, slower than usual, because my nerves still flare when I'm stressed, and locked the door. Sat on the floor, legs shaking, hands numb. I stared at nothing for what felt like hours. He knocked once. Babe, can we talk? I said nothing. The next morning, I began making phone calls. To banks. To debt collectors. To credit bureaus. And, finally, to a lawyer. Because this wasn't just a bad financial choice. It was fraud. And it had my name on it. The lawyer's office smelled like stale coffee and carpet cleaner, but I didn't care. I sat in the small conference room with my printed stack of credit reports, statements, envelopes. Every document with my name on it, but none of it in my handwriting. The woman across from me, her name was Rachel, glanced over the folder for 10 minutes in silence. She didn't blink much, just kept highlighting and scribbling notes. Finally, she looked up and asked quietly, "You didn't authorize any of these?" "No," I said. My voice cracked. I was recovering from surgery. I couldn't even sit upright without help. Rachel nodded slowly. "Then you're looking at potential identity theft, marital fraud, unauthorized use of personal information. Depending on the state and how your accounts are structured, you could file both civil and criminal charges." It should have made me feel better, but all I could feel was the weight of shame, of betrayal. She must have seen it in my face because she softened. "You're not alone. This happens more than people think. You didn't do anything wrong." I didn't cry, but I came close. That night, I told Jeff I wanted to separate our finances immediately. He didn't argue. Not at first. Just stared at the TV like I'd asked him to take out the trash. But later, when I tried to transfer my half of our savings into a new personal account, I realized something else. The money was already gone. All of it. $27,000. Wiped. "Where is it?" I asked him, voice cold. "Used it to pay down the cards," he said, not even looking guilty. What else was I supposed to do? It wasn't even his money. I'd inherited that after my grandmother passed, a safety net I'd clung to through school, house payments, doctor visits. He drained it without a word. The next day, I froze my credit, filed a fraud report, changed every password I had. I went through every drawer in our house, found receipts he hadn't thrown out, statements he never opened. It was worse than I thought. He hadn't just spent recklessly, he'd gambled. Horse racing, crypto, poker, sketchy apps I had to Google to understand. When I confronted him, he snapped. It was a phase. I was trying to build something. "You just don't understand risk." I said, "You bet our future on a fantasy," and used my name to do it. He shouted something about supporting the household while I was lying in bed all day. That's when I lost it. "Do you think I wanted to have my organs cut out? You think this was some vacation?" He didn't respond. Instead, the next morning, he started love-bombing me. Breakfast in bed. Flowers. Long texts about how much he missed me as a partner. He wrote a letter. Yes, a letter. About how he got scared. About how he was just trying to keep us afloat. Then came the gaslighting. "You told me to handle everything. You didn't ask. You didn't want to know. So I made choices. You needed me to step up, and I did. You're just mad because I wasn't perfect." I recorded every conversation. I didn't even feel guilty. I needed proof. Because something in my gut told me he was setting me up to look complicit, like I'd known, and just changed my mind later. Meanwhile, Rachel, my lawyer, helped me start the process of legal protection. Letters to creditors. Disputes filed. She warned me it wouldn't be easy. That because we were married, there would be complications. But you're smart, she said. You've documented everything. That's going to help you. I kept digging. Found out he'd borrowed $5,000 from his friend's business account. Promised to pay it back once the crypto flipped. That friend? Suing him now. Found a Venmo transfer labeled, "Thanks for the setup face blowing kiss," to a woman I'd never heard of. When I clicked through her profile, I saw something that made me go cold. She'd posted a picture last fall, standing in front of our couch. He brought someone into our home. While I was recovering. While I couldn't walk without help. I didn't even tell him I found it. I just took screenshots. Started a second Dropbox folder. That night, I emailed Rachel. We need to talk about divorce. Jeff found the divorce papers on the kitchen table the next morning. He didn't read them right away. Just stared at the envelope like it had bitten him. Then he looked up and said, "So that's it? You're just giving up?" I didn't answer. I was drinking coffee on the porch, my laptop open beside me, updating Rachel with more evidence. I'd started calling it my war folder. He followed me outside, stood there in his stupid robe like he was still in charge of anything. "You're not thinking clearly," he said. "This is emotional. You're still hormonal from surgery. You should sleep on it." That phrase, hormonal, made something snap in me. I stood up, looked him dead in the eyes, and said, "You stole my name, my credit, my inheritance, and brought another woman into my home while I was recovering from life-altering surgery. The only thing I regret is not seeing who you were sooner." He went quiet. Then, like clockwork, the mask slipped. "If you go through with this," he said, "you're going to ruin me. You think people won't ask why your husband's name is all over your credit report? You think this won't follow you too?" I smiled. Because by then, I'd already scheduled the meeting. It was a Thursday afternoon when I met with his boss. I didn't go to ruin him. I went because his job was one of the few things keeping him afloat, and one of the few places he was still pretending to be a good guy. I brought documents, screenshots, emails, a timeline, explained the situation calmly, professionally. I didn't ask for him to be fired. Just said I wanted to correct any potential liability tied to my name, especially since some accounts listed his employer. His boss thanked me, said they'd be reviewing things internally. 3 days later, Jeff was asked to resign. He showed up at my sister's house that night, drunk, barefoot, pounding on the door. I didn't let him in. He screamed through the door that I'd ruined his life, that I was taking it too far, that he'd fix it if I just stopped this insanity. Then he said something I'll never forget. "I should have just waited until you died on that table. Would have been easier." I called the cops. They took him in for intoxication and disorderly conduct. I filed for a restraining order the next morning. 3 weeks later, I got an email from his mother. Subject line, "We need to talk." I didn't open it right away, just stared at it like it might explode. Then I skimmed the first few lines. She said she didn't approve of how he'd handled things, but family is family. That I was being vindictive. That Jeff was going through a lot and needed support, not persecution. I didn't reply. Instead, I posted my own story. A quiet, respectful thread on Facebook. No names. Just facts. I ended it with, "Financial abuse is still abuse. If this helps even one woman freeze her credit before it's too late, I'll take the fallout." The response was overwhelming. Friends reached out. Coworkers. People I hadn't spoken to in years. Women DM'd me with their own horror stories. A woman from his past, someone he dated in college, messaged me privately and said, "He did something similar to me. You're not crazy." That message? I screenshot it too. Final total of what he racked up in my name, $82,443. Between legal fees, debt negotiation, and identity restoration, I spent the next 9 months rebuilding my credit from scratch. I got a second job freelancing. Rented a tiny guest house behind a friend's place. I learned how to cook for one. How to fix my own flat tire. How to cry at night without hating myself in the morning. And slowly, painfully, I began to trust myself again. The divorce was finalized last month. He didn't contest anything. Probably because he couldn't afford to. I kept the car, what little savings I rebuilt, and, more importantly, my name. He texted once. Just one line. "Hope you're happy now." I didn't answer. Because I am. Not happy in the fairy tale way. Not better now like a rom-com ending. But free. And for the first time in years, I can breathe without checking over my shoulder. I was finally starting to feel human again. Not great. Not healed. but functional. I could go a full day without checking my credit report 3 times. I could eat a meal without calculating in my head what I'd lost to his debt. I could sleep 6 hours in a row without jolting awake because I dreamed he drained another account. I'd moved into a 1-bedroom over a bakery, noisy in the mornings, but safe. Smelled like cinnamon. My landlord was a 60-something retired chef named Mike who left fresh bagels on my doorstep twice a week. It was quiet. No shared walls. No shared life. I was free. And then, the letter came. At first, I didn't even open it. The envelope looked plain, but heavy. From the IRS. I assumed it was some routine notification. Maybe a leftover return from the year before. I almost tossed it in the deal with later pile. But something about it, the weight, maybe, made me tear it open. 3 sentences in, my hands started shaking. Apparently, someone had filed a joint tax return using my name. With Jeff's. Months after our divorce was finalized. And it wasn't just a filing mistake. There were inconsistencies. The IRS had flagged mismatched reported income and listed my SSN under audit review. I dropped the paper like it burned me. My vision got blurry. I had to sit down on the floor. The air felt too thick. I reread the letter 5 times. Thought maybe I was hallucinating. Maybe it was a phishing scam. But no, the return was real. Filed under my name, with his income, his business expenses, and somehow my medical deductions. He had filed it as if we were still married. He'd done it to get a better refund. That much was clear. And based on the amount listed under anticipated return, he might have gotten a check already. In both our names. I called my lawyer. Told her everything. She told me to fax her the letter immediately and not to contact Jeff under any circumstances. This isn't just more financial manipulation, she said. This is identity continuation fraud. And if the IRS decides to pursue it criminally, he's in real trouble. Will they think I was part of it? I asked. My voice cracked when I said it. She paused. Not with your paper trail. But we need to act fast. I filed a fraud report with the IRS. Put another freeze on my credit. Opened a case with the FTC. It felt like the same dance all over again. Different tune. Same panic. The next few days blurred. I barely ate. My head throbbed from scanning legal language for hours on end. I called my old accountant from 2 jobs ago and asked if she could help untangle the documents. She agreed. She looked them over and said, he copied deductions from your old files. Sloppy, but calculated. Calculated. That word stuck with me. He wasn't just reckless. He was strategic. Waiting, watching, timing his moves so I'd always be a few weeks behind. He thought if he kept it quiet enough, subtle enough, I'd never catch it. And if I did, he figured I'd be too tired to fight again. He wasn't entirely wrong. I was tired. Bone tired. But now I was also angry. And anger, I was learning, was rocket fuel if you aimed it correctly. So I got to work. I requested every document from our prior tax years. I pulled the divorce decree, highlighted every section that referenced financial separation. I gathered all proof that we lived at different addresses. I drafted a full affidavit, signed and notarized, swearing I had no knowledge of the joint return. But I also did something else. I emailed Jeff's mother. 1 sentence. If your son files 1 more document with my name on it, I will have him in handcuffs by Christmas. Tell him I'm not bluffing. She didn't reply. But the next day, Jeff's new business Instagram went dark. His LinkedIn disappeared. His PayPal links broke. Like someone suddenly realized they were being watched. I don't know if she warned him, or if the audit scared him, but for the first time since the whole thing began, he flinched first. And it felt good. I wasn't healed. Not yet. But for the first time in months, I didn't feel like prey. I felt like the one holding the leash. It started with a knock on the front door, which made no sense because no one ever used that entrance. My apartment was in the back of an old converted Victorian house, a little slice of quiet I paid extra for because the last thing I wanted was unannounced visitors. I froze. No one was supposed to know I lived here. My landlord lived upstairs. I hadn't given out my address to anyone but legal contacts, and even then, I routed things through my P.O. box after what happened last time. I waited. No second knock. No voice. Just footsteps retreating. 5 minutes later, I got a text from Mike, the landlord. Hey, weird cue. Did you give your ex this address? Some guy came by asking for you. Said it was urgent legal stuff. I didn't let him in, but he stood out front a while. Just left. I felt like I'd been dunked in ice water. Jeff found me. I hadn't seen him in months. I'd taken every precaution. Moved without telling friends, changed my number, updated passwords, secured my accounts with 2FA, froze my credit twice. There was no way he should have been able to find me. But he had. I texted back, "Please don't ever give him info or access. If he comes again, call the police." Mike replied, "Got it. Already did." He looked sketchy AF. I sat there in silence, staring at my screen, every nerve in my body firing at once. How? I racked my brain. And then I remembered. The mail forwarding. Right after the divorce, I'd set up a 6-month mail redirect from our old house to a P.O. box I could check on weekends. I meant to cancel it after I moved again, but with everything that happened, I hadn't. It was still active. And I'd accidentally used that same P.O. box on a form tied to my new lease, one Jeff apparently still had access to. He hadn't hacked me. He didn't need to. I'd left a crack in the door, and he'd slid through. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying it, him walking up the path, standing just out of sight, hoping I'd come out. My body locked up at the idea of seeing him face to face. Even now, even after everything, I didn't know what I'd do if I had to look him in the eye. Would I scream? Spit? Freeze? The fear wasn't rational anymore. It was cellular. I called my lawyer the next morning and explained everything. She told me to document the incident, file a report, and, crucially, amend the restraining order to include my new residence, which we hadn't originally listed since it was supposed to be private. I hate to say it, she told me, but he's escalating. Again. That word. Again. It made me want to throw up. So I filed the report, sent the updated paperwork, paid for a private mail drop at a facility 20 miles away just to avoid this happening again. But I also realized something else that night. I was tired of playing defense. This whole time, I'd been patching holes in the dam while he found new ways to poke them. He forged taxes, lied to creditors, showed up at my home, and the law, while helpful, was always a few steps behind. So I did the only thing I could think of to tip the scale. I went public. I didn't use his name. Didn't have to. I wrote a long post in a private Facebook group for women dealing with financial betrayal, a place I'd joined quietly months earlier but never posted in. This time, I told everything from the diagnosis and surgery to the credit cards, the crypto, the forged tax return, and now this. I didn't hold back. I wrote about how he used my recovery as camouflage, how he stole my inheritance, how he drained me emotionally, financially, and spiritually, and when I thought it was over, he weaponized my own documents to come back for more. I posted screenshots of bank notices, with identifying info blacked out, IRS letters, collections bills. I even included a picture of the front door where he came to find me. The response was overwhelming. Within 48 hours, it had 11,000 likes, 2,000 comments, and more messages than I could track. Women reached out with stories that mirrored mine. He opened 4 cards in my name too. My ex forged our taxes after we separated, and I didn't find out until the IRS froze my refund. I thought I was crazy until I read this. I cried reading them. Not out of sadness. Out of validation. Then I took a deep breath and copied the same story, anonymized, onto Reddit. A few subs. r/2x chromosomes. r/surviving infidelity. r/personal finance. One post hit the front page. And that's when things changed. An old coworker emailed me, "Is this about Jeff? Because this lines up way too closely with stuff I heard when he worked at Apex." A woman I'd met once through a networking event DM'd me. "I think we dated the same guy. Can I show you a picture?" It was him. But that wasn't the worst part. She sent a screenshot of his Bumble profile, and the bio said, "Single entrepreneur. Rebuilding after toxic marriage. Love to help people financially plan and grow." I laughed. Then I choked. Then I emailed the screenshot to Rachel, my lawyer. "Should we add this to the record?" I asked. She replied, "Absolutely. And send it to the IRS investigator too." Because yes, that's right, by this point, Jeff's forged tax return had triggered a real audit. Not just for that year, but retroactively. Turns out, when you commit identity fraud against a person with documented legal protection and a digital folder that could humble a criminal defense team, the government pays attention. The final straw came a week later. A letter. No envelope. No postage. Just slid under my door. In his handwriting. It said, "You've ruined everything. I loved you. I handled everything while you were too weak to function, and you repay me by turning everyone against me. You think you won? You think any of this makes you strong? You're still sick. Still alone. And you'll always need someone to save you." That was it. No signature. No threat. Just venom. I took a photo. Filed it. Emailed it to Rachel. Called the police. The officer came, logged the incident, and finally said what I needed to hear. "You've done everything right." And honestly, he sounds desperate. Desperate. That night, I realized something. Desperate people don't act like they're in control. Desperate people flail. Desperate people lose. And Jeff? He'd already lost. He just didn't know it yet. It started with Lisa. We hadn't spoken in over a year. She was one of those friends you don't quite cut off, but who sort of floats to the edge of your life when things get hard. She'd known Jeff and me back when things were still normal. If normal ever really applied. I was surprised to see her name pop up on my phone. Her text just said, "Hey, not trying to get in the middle of anything, but Jeff's been saying some things. About you. I thought you should know." My stomach dropped. I called her. She picked up right away. Sounded nervous. Said she ran into him at a mutual friend's birthday. Said he looked rough, like someone who hadn't slept properly in weeks. He cornered her. Told her his side. He said you're on some kind of revenge warpath, she explained quietly. That you're trying to ruin him. That you've been lying online about him being abusive. That you exaggerated everything to get sympathy. I didn't say anything. He also, he told a few people that you used his name to get approved for the medical loan. That the IRS stuff was your fault, not his. There it was. His new story. A total inversion. I didn't cry. Didn't scream. I just thanked Lisa, hung up, and opened my laptop. He wanted to go public? Fine. So would I. First, I called Rachel. Told her everything. She said not to post anything reactionary, not without documentation, which, thankfully, I had in spades. Then I drafted a new post. This time, I wasn't anonymous. I used my real first name. Shared a selfie. Blurred out sensitive documents, but made it very clear who I was and why I was speaking. I titled it, "This is what financial abuse looks like. Please don't fall for his charm." I laid it all out. Screenshots of the bank accounts. Credit reports showing new debt under my name. The forged IRS letters. The timeline of the divorce and the joint tax filing that followed. Even the final letter he left under my door. I didn't just tell the story, I proved it. I ended with this line. Abusers don't always scream. Sometimes they smile. Sometimes they cry and call it love. But what they never do is take responsibility. And if he sees this? Good. I hope it makes him sweat. I posted it to Facebook. Then Twitter. Then Medium. And it exploded. Within 24 hours, the Facebook post had 80,000 shares. My Twitter thread was reposted by 2 domestic violence nonprofits. A financial empowerment group DM'd me asking if I wanted to do a live Q&A. A trauma therapist with a big following offered a free Zoom session. But the wildest part? His old coworker, the one from his entrepreneur phase, emailed me. He attached a PDF. Said he wasn't sure what I'd want to do with it, but maybe it helps. It was an internal HR memo. Jeff had been under investigation months before the divorce for inappropriate use of client funds and hostile communication with vendors. It didn't go anywhere, probably because he left before they could finish, but the fact that it existed was damning. And now I had it. I forwarded it to Rachel. She replied with one line. Let's prepare to go nuclear. That same week, Jeff tried to do damage control. I saw his new Instagram post. Black and white. Long caption. Sometimes love isn't enough. Sometimes people change. I've made mistakes, who hasn't? But I'll always care for her. And I hope one day, the truth speaks louder than gossip. Cue sad face emoji. Cue carefully curated comments from his friends calling him brave and a good man who deserves peace. I didn't respond publicly. I didn't need to. Because the next morning, I woke up to dozens of screenshots in my inbox from women I didn't know, forwarding me DMs he'd sent them. Creepy, manipulative messages. Promising financial mentorship and business coaching for strong women. Some with clear flirtation. Some with outright offers. He was still doing it. Still targeting vulnerable women under the same recycled lines. So I did what I had to do. I sent everything, every DM, every message, every date stamp screenshot to the nonprofit legal group that had contacted me after my first post went viral. And they agreed to file an official complaint. Not just civil. Criminal. The last straw? He tried to report me. Filed a counterclaim for defamation. Claimed I cost him income and reputation. He attached copies of my Reddit posts, tweets, even the Medium article, as if documenting the truth could somehow count as slander. Rachel handled it masterfully. She submitted a cross motion. Highlighted the restraining order. Relisted the identity fraud report. Provided verified credit history copies. Attached the memo from his previous job. And included the actual IRS audit notice, with my signature proving I never consented to a joint filing. His complaint was dismissed in under 24 hours. The judge's note said. The defendant's evidence is consistent, corroborated, and legally protected under the First Amendment. The plaintiff's claims lack merit. I read that sentence 14 times. I screenshotted it. I framed it. Not because it ended the war, but because it marked the moment I stopped playing defense. From that point on, I wasn't hiding anymore. I didn't go to the sentencing hearing. Rachel said I didn't have to. Said the judge had everything he needed. Said if I showed up, it'd be for closure, not because justice required it. And honestly, I didn't want to see his face again. Not even from across a courtroom. What was left to say? The restitution was set. The fraud charges stuck. His accounts were flagged, his credit frozen, and his financial mentorship business was officially shut down by the state. I didn't even feel triumphant. I just felt done. That morning, I brewed coffee, opened my laptop, cleared out old folders labeled court and debt and damage control. I didn't delete them, but I moved them to an external drive, somewhere far off my desktop, out of sight. I spent the rest of the day walking. No music, no podcast, just steps. It started raining halfway through the park. I didn't even pull out my umbrella. I just let it soak in. My jacket, my scalp, my breath, my past. For the first time, I wasn't carrying anything for him. Not guilt, not confusion, not fear. The only weight left was mine, and it was finally light enough to hold without breaking. That night, I wrote one last note to myself. Not to post, not to share, just to keep. It said, "You didn't deserve it. You didn't imagine it. You survived it. Now go live like you never need permission again." And then I closed the laptop and opened the rest of my life.